Night fell without warning. Not gently, not peacefully. It swallowed the sea. The waters of the Pacific Ocean turned black, endless, and unforgiving. No moon, no stars, just darkness stretching in every direction. Perfect cover, perfect danger. Somewhere in that darkness, engines whispered, not loud, not proud, but hidden. They were small, almost invisible, nothing like the massive warships that ruled the ocean. But that was the point. These were America's secret weapons, PT boats. Fast, light, deadly. Officially called patrol torpedo boats, they were built to strike without warning and disappear before the enemy could react. The Japanese Navy didn't fear them. Not at first. Because how could something so small threaten something so powerful? That belief would not last long. It was 1943, deep into the chaos of World War II. The war in the Pacific had become a deadly game of territory, supply lines, and survival. At the center of it, the Solomon Islands, a chain of land surrounded by dangerous waters and constant conflict. Night after night, Japanese destroyers moved through these waters, delivering troops and supplies. Fast, precise, relentless. The Americans called it the Tokyo Express. It was nearly unstoppable, until something began hunting them in the dark. Low on the water, fast as lightning, silent until it was too late. PT boats. Inside one of these boats, the air was thick with tension. Engines vibrated beneath the deck. The smell of fuel filled the space. Men watched the darkness, eyes straining for movement. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every sound felt amplified. Then a signal. Enemy ships approaching. The crew froze, not in fear but in focus. Out there, hidden in the Black Sea, Japanese destroyers cut through the water, unaware of what waited ahead. They moved with confidence, routine, control. But they weren't alone. The PT boats adjusted course quietly, carefully. No lights. No noise beyond the low hum of engines. They became part of the darkness itself. The distance closed. Closer. Closer. Then the moment. Fire.
Torpedoes launched.
They sliced through the water like ghosts, unseen, unstoppable. Seconds passed. Then impact. An explosion shattered the silence. Fire erupted from the side of a Japanese ship. Metal tore apart. The calm night turned into chaos. Alarms screamed. Men shouted. Confusion spread instantly. And before the enemy could react, the PT boats were gone. Vanished back into the darkness. This was their strength.
Strike.
Disappear. Survive. Again and again, night after night, these attacks continued. The Japanese began to notice. But they didn't understand. Ships hit without warning. Explosions from nowhere. Enemies that couldn't be seen. Panic began to creep in. Destroyers that once moved confidently now hesitated. Lookouts strained their eyes into the darkness. Every shadow became suspicious. The ocean had changed. And so had the war. Inside the PT boats, the missions grew more dangerous. Because now the enemy was alert. Searchlights cut through the night. Gunfire erupted at the slightest movement. The hunters were now being hunted. But the PT crews kept going. They had to. Every successful strike meant fewer supplies reaching enemy forces. Every attack slowed the advance. Every explosion mattered. One night, the tension reached its peak. A group of PT boats waited silently, engines barely running, hearts pounding. They knew a convoy was coming. They could feel it. Minutes passed. Then, shapes appeared in the distance. Large, fast, deadly. Japanese destroyers. Closer than before. Closer than ever. This time, escape would not be easy. The order came, move in. The boats surged forward, cutting across the water at incredible speed. Spray flew into the air. Engines roared louder now. No more hiding. They were committed. Searchlights snapped on. Blinding beams cut through the darkness. Gunfire erupted. Bullets tore through the night, striking the water, ripping past the boats. Explosions erupted around them, but they didn't stop. They pushed forward. Closer. Closer. Then fire. Torpedoes launched again. The moment stretched. Then another explosion. A direct hit. The destroyers shook violently. Flames burst into the sky. But this time, the PT boats didn't escape cleanly. Gunfire intensified. One boat was hit. Wood splintered. Fuel ignited. Men shouted.
Chaos.
Survival became uncertain. And yet they kept moving. Because stopping meant death. The surviving boats turned sharply, racing back into the darkness. Behind them, fire lit up the sea. Smoke rose high into the night sky. Another successful strike. Another message sent. The Japanese Navy was no longer in control of the night. The darkness belonged to someone else now. But this was only the beginning. Because the more the PT boats succeeded, the more dangerous the missions became. And soon, one encounter would push everything to the edge, a moment where survival would hang by a thread, a moment that would prove just how deadly and fragile these missions truly were. And what happened next would shock even the men who lived through it. The night did not forgive mistakes. It hid them, then punished them without warning. The waters around the Solomon Islands were darker than ever, heavy with tension, thick with the memory of explosions that had already changed the rhythm of the war. The Japanese knew now they were being hunted, not by massive fleets or overwhelming force, but by something smaller, faster, invisible. The next mission felt different. Inside the PT boats, no one said it out loud, but they all felt it. This was no longer just a strike. This was survival. Engines hummed quietly as the boats drifted low against the water. No lights. No sound beyond the steady vibration beneath their feet. The men watched the horizon, eyes straining against the darkness. Then came the signal. Movement ahead. Shapes formed in the distance, low, dark, deadly. Japanese destroyers. But this time they were ready. Searchlights snapped across the ocean without warning, slicing through the darkness in blinding beams. The night was exposed. Gunfire followed instantly, sharp, relentless. The ocean erupted. Water exploded around the PT boats as shells struck close. The calm surface turned violent. Move! Engines roared to life. The boats surged forward, cutting hard across the waves, bouncing violently as they accelerated. Spray crashed over the decks. This was no longer a silent hunt. This was a fight. Bullets ripped through the air, tearing past wood and metal. Splinters flew. The smell of fuel mixed with smoke. Still, they pushed forward. Closer. Closer. Because they had one chance. Torpedoes armed. Targets locked. Fire. The launch shook the boat. Torpedoes raced into the black water, leaving faint trails that vanished almost instantly. Seconds passed. Then explosion. A violent blast ripped through one of the destroyers. Fire surged upward, lighting the night in orange and red. The ship staggered, its momentum broken. But this time, the enemy did not panic. They reacted fast. Searchlights locked onto the PT boats. Gunfire intensified. The hunters were now exposed. One boat took a hit. A sharp crack, then fire. Flames burst along the deck. Men scrambled, shouting over engines and explosions. Water rushed in through shattered wood. The boat slowed, dangerously. For a moment, it looked like they wouldn't make it. But the crew fought back. Fire extinguishers roared to life. Water pumped. Damage controlled, barely. The boat lurched forward again. Still alive, still moving. The other PT boats didn't stop. They couldn't. Stopping meant death. They turned sharply, engines screaming, weaving through gunfire as they raced back into the darkness. Behind them, the burning destroyer lit up the sea. Smoke climbed into the sky. The strike had worked, but the cost had nearly been too high. Back at base, silence followed their return. No cheering. No celebration. Just exhaustion. Men stepped off slowly, some injured, some shaken, all aware of how close they had come. This wasn't just war. This was survival on the edge. Night after night, the pattern continued. Strike, disappear, return. Each mission harder than the last. Each encounter more dangerous. The Japanese adapted. Convoys moved faster. Escorts increased. Search patterns tightened. But the PT boats adapted too. They became smarter, faster, more unpredictable. They used the darkness like a weapon. They learned to wait, to strike at the perfect moment, to vanish before retaliation. Slowly, something changed. The Japanese no longer owned the night. They feared it. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every quiet stretch of water could erupt into fire. Confidence turned into caution. Caution turned into hesitation. And in war, hesitation is deadly. One final mission would prove it. Intelligence confirmed a heavily guarded convoy moving through the area. More ships. More weapons. More danger than ever before. The PT crews knew this would be different. They also knew they couldn't ignore it. If the convoy got through, it would strengthen enemy forces and prolong the war. So they went. Engines low. Boats hidden. Men ready. The ocean stretched endlessly before them. Dark, silent, waiting. Then contact. Multiple ships. Heavily armed. Moving fast. This was it. The boats split into positions, surrounding the convoy from different angles. Timing was everything. Too early, and they would be seen. Too late, and the chance would be gone. Seconds passed. Then the signal.
Attack.
The PT boats surged forward from the darkness, engines roaring as they closed the distance at full speed. Searchlights snapped on instantly. Gunfire followed. But this time, the PT boats were ready. They zigzagged across the water, dodging incoming fire, closing in faster than expected. Torpedoes launched, one after another. The water came alive with motion. Then impact. Explosions tore through the convoy. One ship erupted in flames. Another slowed, crippled. Chaos spread instantly. And in that chaos, the PT boats disappeared.
Gone.
Back into the darkness. The mission was a success. More than that, it was a message. Even the smallest force could change a battle. Speed, precision, and courage could overcome size and power. The night no longer belonged to the Japanese. It belonged to those who dared to fight within it. The legacy of the PT boats would continue throughout World War II. Their missions would grow. Their impact would spread. But those early strikes from the shadows were different. They were the moments when everything changed, when fear crossed the ocean, and when a small, fast, nearly invisible force proved that even giants could be stunned. Because sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't size. It's surprise. And in the darkness of the Pacific, that surprise changed everything.